Today we are going to talk about the Horner syndrome and its relation to brachial plexus injury. We know that it's very much important to determine the level of injury in brachial plexus injury as early as possible, because you need to know whether the injury is preganglionic or postganglionic, because it really dominates your decision for surgery. If the injury is postganglionic, then you can wait up to 6 months to evaluate the patient more. But if the injury is preganglionic, then there is no benefit of waiting, and consideration of nerve transfer or functional muscle transfer is to be taken to treat the patient. Management of brachial plexus injury is a vast discussion. I am going to just explain the question: why, when, and where does the Horner syndrome is related to brachial plexus injury? First, I would like to recapitulate a little bit of anatomy. This is the picture of brachial plexus. It is formed by the ventral rami of C5 to T1 spinal nerve, which we call roots. Then they join each other and form the upper, middle, and lower trunk, all of which are divided into anterior and posterior division, and then they form the cords and ultimately gives up branches to the upper extremity. The root lies in the intervertebral foramen. The trunks are between the anterior and middle scalene muscle. Divisions are behind the clavicle and cords are behind the pec minor muscle. Brachial plexus injury is classified into three categories: the preganglionic, postganglionic, supraclavicular, and infraclavicular. So if we look at the structure of the spinal nerve, we can see that the ventral root and dorsal root meet here and form a spinal nerve. Up to this position lies within the intervertebral foramen, and injury before this ganglion is called preganglionic brachial plexus injury. There is gray rami and white rami communication between the spinal cord and the sympathetic chain. Interesting fact about them is that gray rami, which contain the postganglionic nerve fiber of sympathetic nervous system, is present at every spinal level, but white rami, which contain the preganglionic sympathetic fiber, is present only in the T1 to T12 and L1, L2 spinal level. So among all the roots of the brachial plexus, only T1 has the white rami communication with the sympathetic chain. So T1 bridges the relationship between the Horner syndrome and brachial plexus injury. This is the picture of cervical ganglion. There are three cervical ganglion: superior, middle, and inferior. The superior cervical ganglion, which is the largest one, is located at the C2, C3 vertebral level, and the postganglionic fiber to eye and face arises from here. There are two types of muscle in the eyelid. One is protector muscle and the other is retractor muscle. Protector muscle is orbicularis oculi, which helps to close the eye. Retractor muscle for upper eyelid is mainly done by levator palpebrae superioris, which is supplied by the cranial nerve 3. Molar muscle is responsible for 2 to 3 mm movement of the upper eyelid, and it is supplied by the sympathetic nerve via long ciliary nerve. The Horner syndrome consists of ipsilateral presentation of miosis, that is constricted pupil, partial ptosis, that is droopy eyelid, anhidrosis, that is absence of sweating of face, and enophthalmos. So how the Horner syndrome is related to brachial plexus injury? The sympathetic innervation to eye consists of three neuron arc. Any interruption to that pathway gives rise to Horner syndrome. The first order neuron arises from the hypothalamus and synapses with the intermediolateral cell column of C8 to T2 spinal cord. Second order neuron arises and its fiber travel through the white rami communication between the T1 spinal nerve and sympathetic chain. They then ascend to superior cervical ganglion. Here the third order neuron arises and postganglionic fiber reaches to the internal carotid artery. Some vasomotor and pseudomotor fiber arises. They supply the vessel and sweat gland of the face. Now rest of the fiber follow the internal carotid artery and reach the cavernous sinus through the carotid canal. This is a picture of coronal section of cavernous sinus. You can see that the internal carotid artery is closely related to the cranial nerve 3, 4, 5, 6. So from here, this sympathetic fiber entered the orbit through the superior orbital foramen along with ophthalmic division of the cranial nerve 5. Then they supply the molar muscle of the eyelid and dilator pupillae of the iris via the long ciliary nerve. Now, if there is preganglionic injury to T1 spinal nerve root of the brachial plexus, then the sympathetic pathway get interrupted. Interruption to the sweat gland supply leads to anhidrosis. Interruption to the iris dilator results in meiosis, and interruption to molar muscle supply leads to partial ptosis. The ptosis is partial because supply to the levator pulpibri superioris is still intact. So that's how the Horner syndrome develop in preganglionic brachial plexus injury of the T1 nerve root. Thank you.